All right, getting right back into work on the rally car build. We've got 31 days until the rally, as you can see, and this is a very small portion of the list because I got unmotivated and didn't want to write it all out. But the next thing that we're knocking out is the battery box. So we have a new battery, and it is going to go inside the car rather than in the engine bay, and it's going to go right in front of the passenger seat. So like right around here. And here's the battery. So pretty small guy. It doesn't need to be overly large for this type of car. We don't have a huge engine to be turning over. It's not high compression, nothing crazy like that. So I can get away with such a small battery. Now, if I ever have an alternator problem or something like this, this battery will definitely not cut it. Unfortunately, that would mean I DNF the rally, but kind of one of those drawbacks that you just have to accept, that hopefully you don't get an alternator failure, because you'd probably DNF anyway if that happened. So we got the battery. Like I said, it's tiny. So this is a Anti Gravity ATX20HD. I don't know how much it weighs, but it's probably, if I had to guess, like 6.5, 7 pounds. It's super light, super small. It's gonna be really easy to package it inside the car. I already kind of have a rough idea of how I want to build the mount, but we're gonna hop into Fusion and I'm gonna draw it up.
So I'm going to be keeping the design relatively simple. It's going to be 2 different pieces, like a battery tray and then 1 piece on top. And then I am going to make some 1-inch tube nuts out of 1-inch outer diameter tubing. And those are going to be actually welded to the chassis, mounting the whole thing in. But I wanted to do it that way just in case, for whatever reason, I need to change the battery in like a year or two, like this battery doesn't last, or I just hate it or something like that. I can just make a new battery tray essentially and throw it in the car. And it should make it relatively easy because I can just reuse the mounting points that I already have in the chassis. I do really enjoy getting to draw stuff in Fusion before I actually make it. I'm highly inefficient at it and I'm still learning a lot on it. And there's probably so much that I don't know how to do in it. And also, like, I'm probably doing it like the worst way possible as far as efficiency goes. But just being able to make the part, kind of visualize it first and see what it looks like before cutting it out, it seems to minimize a lot of the mistakes that I would normally have when I am just making it by hand, and then not even including the fact that it takes minutes to draw it up. This probably took me 30 minutes to draw, and then another 5 minutes for the plasma cutter to cut, whereas if I wanted to actually cut all that out by hand, one, it wouldn't have looked as good, and it probably would have taken me longer. And if I did mess up, which you'll see me mess up something in the future in this video, and I had to recut it out because I bent it wrong, because that's what happens, spoiler alert, it just would have been like devastating because I just spent an hour and a half, 2 hours fabricating that by hand with a bunch of manual labor. So super happy with being able to use Fusion and then going over to the plasma cutter with it, and eventually have become a little bit more efficient and be able to do a little bit more complex stuff.
Well, I just finished up the design and we are about ready to start cutting it out. I am going to make the bottom out of 16 gauge, just mild steel sheet metal, because I have kind of an abundance of it, but I didn't want to make the top out of it because then I'd have to paint it and it's not going to look that nice. So we're just going to do 16 gauge sheet metal, and then I have a bunch of 080 5052 aluminum, and we're going to cut the top out of that. Should look kind of nice. I could just sand it, put a little texture on it, and then I don't have to paint it, which is good.
This just really goes to show how efficient it is when you can draw a part and then actually like cut it out with a CNC machine. Even though it is just a plasma cutter, it just saves so much time, and the result is so nice. I mean, look at that. I mean, that literally took probably 2.5 minutes of cutting on the machine, and then probably another 2 minutes of cleanup. Same with the mild steel stuff, and then a few minutes of bending, a few minutes of welding, and essentially this part's done, which is just super convenient, and I'm just so happy with having that little thing in the shop.
Well, we got both cut out, and for those interested in the cut quality that you kind of get from something like this, I'll show you guys briefly. So this is all dross, as you can see, like the flaky edge here, if this thing would focus. All that's dross. it'll all flake right off. Typically, I just hit this all with a wire wheel and it'll just launch it right off. The mild steel stuff is pretty easy. Honestly, I could get a cleaner edge, but I was kind of using some worn out consumables. And I also had the program settings set for that. I forgot to change them. I need to like keep working on my settings for aluminum because I haven't really cut that much out of it, but it's kind of okay for now. Because you can clean it up relatively easily, and if you just hit it lightly with like a scuff pad, it really cleans up the edge and makes it look nicer. So I'll clean both of these up and then we'll put them in the brake. I just got that tool not that long ago, the surface conditioning thing that I was just using, and I'm definitely pleased with it. For aluminum, it's really nice. It gives you like that real nice brushed finish as long as you go in one direction. Even if you have to switch it up, it still looks pretty good. It doesn't really get rid of deep scratches, so if you get deep scratches into it, obviously you gotta get rid of them beforehand without trying to make more scratches. But if you have a relatively clean piece of aluminum like I did, it's really easy to clean up and it looks really good. I like it anyway. So this is ready to be bent, and so is the mild steel chunk. We'll get those bent up and then we'll weld the mild steel up, and then I got to make those tube mounts for the chassis. Why it's important to consider your order of operations when it comes to bending. And that's the new piece. I need to bend these up this way, but I had just bent the rest of the box, and obviously can't do that. Got to bend those before I finish the box.
So you can see that I added those holes. The thing was just stupid heavy, and it really didn't need to be, and I probably could have added a few more holes to it just to lighten it up and make it look a little nicer. But got it all done. Super happy with it, but I do need to work on figuring out exactly the bend radius for each different type of material. So like 16 gauge obviously is going to bend a little bit different than the thicker 080 stuff with aluminum. And obviously all of them are going to have a different radius when they're actually bent. And you can put all that into Fusion, which is convenient, but you kind of have to figure it out before you can do that. And the best way to do that is just get a test piece and actually figure out what the bend is doing when you bend it to it like a 90 degree. I haven't cared too much just because I haven't done too many parts that are going to be super visible. But if I ever do another part that's going to be like in the open or something like that, where all the height of the bends need to end up at the exact same spot without trimming or anything like that, then I definitely need to go through and figure all that out. Once I got it all welded up though, we were able to start on the mounting solution. So like I said, I was just using some 1-inch 120 wall tubing with some weld nuts on the inside. I used M8s. I didn't probably need to. I could have probably got away with just using some M6 bolts, but I had a bunch of M8s weld nuts floating around, so I just made it out of that. Once we got them welded up though, then we went over to the car and set the car on fire. It's been a while since I've set some seam sealer on fire and burned a whole bunch of paint. Definitely not a fun time if you've never done it. It's probably like one of the worst things to do. I tried to remove as much as I could without removing too much, because I didn't obviously want to remove a whole bunch around where the bungs were actually going to be welded into the chassis. But a lot of the fire has started from the backside, because the proper way to do it is to strip off the undercoating behind it, because obviously the weld's going to penetrate into it and then set that stuff on fire, and that's exactly what happened. So you'll see the smoke gets pretty bad here in a minute. I really need to start wearing like an actual like fresh air respirator with this. I had a respirator on, but it really didn't do much as far as actually helping with the fumes and how bad the smoke was from the welding. I actually had to take a break a few times to just get away from the car for like 3-4 minutes at least for the smoke to clear after putting out the fires. But eventually got it in. It doesn't look too bad. We'll throw some spray paint on there that's the same color, and should be pretty unnoticeable since it is a rally car that's super jankety and beat up anyway.
Well, after setting the car on fire a few times, we got it welded in, and it looks pretty good. It's pretty stout. Obviously, the battery's going to move around quite a bit right now, but that's because I need to add that foam, so it takes up all that space. But yeah, I'm super happy with how it came out. I mean, that's super stout right now. Obviously, got to paint up the outside. I'll probably open up the holes a little bit in the bottom plate, just because it was kind of finicky getting those bolts in, just to make it a little bit easier, take a little bit more out, just to be able to get this thing in and out relatively easily, but not that it ever will need to come out once it's in. But yeah, super pleased with how it came out. Now I'm going to pull the bottom plate out, open up those holes, and then probably throw some paint on the bottom, and then we're essentially done with this because I don't have any foam right now. It's all mounted in there, obviously temporarily, because we got to get the battery cables painted, everything. But I'm actually super happy with how it came out, which is pretty rare for me. Usually I do a project and I'm not happy with how it looks. There are a few things I would have liked to change, like probably not making tabs as big. I was also thinking about welding into the chassis, but I was torn because if I don't like this battery, or if this battery doesn't last or something like that, and I want to go to a different brand, I wouldn't want to have a box actually welded into the chassis that was designed specifically for this battery size. So if I decide that this battery doesn't work for this car or something like that in the future, and I need to go to like a Braille battery or a different kind of battery, I can still use those mounting points that I welded into the chassis, and that's a good thing, and I can just build a new box based on that because there's enough room around it to go to a bigger battery or something like that. So that's kind of why I didn't do that, because I wanted to leave it a little bit modular, just in case in the future this battery sucks. Some lithium batteries, they don't really last that long, so that could be an issue too. There's a lot of good reviews on these batteries though on the internet, so that's kind of why I went with it. It was pretty expensive. It was like $300, which honestly, if you think about it, that's not much more than just a typical battery. Once you factor in the fact that it weighs literally 4 times less, that's a pretty big weight savings. I mean, it takes a lot more money to save that much weight in a lot of different areas, such as like polycarbonate windows. I mean, that would be about 30 pounds, and that's $900 just for that to get it sent here, not including shipping, things like that. So there's a lot of weight savings to be had, and it's
kind of a relatively cheap mod if you think about it, as long as it's a race car. But we got one more thing done on the list. I also need to cross off the day, because obviously we finished that day and it's the morning, but we can get rid of the battery box on the list, which is good. One last thing on there. Oh, and then we gotta change this. Now we got 30 days, 30 whole days to get this car done. I think what's next will be the fire suppression system, because I'm kind of at a standstill because I'm waiting on some stuff to get in. I need some components to finish up all the electrical stuff. And then I also need some like hoses to do my heater core box. I can't do the brakes yet because of those problems. Those things kind of have to be done beforehand. So I think the fire suppression system is about the only thing I can do, because I don't want to start moving into like the engine bay and doing stuff out here until I kind of get the inside situated, unless of course I get to a complete standstill and I don't have any parts. But it'd be nice to have this thing running, and it can start probably like seats in, most of the stuff done on the interior before I like move out and do all the stuff outside the car. Because honestly, a lot of the front end is done. I could slap it together really quick if I wanted to, but depending on how much time I have, I'm gonna rework some of the things to make it better, make it seal better, and have less issues with it. So anyway, I'm gonna stop rambling. I need to get working on the fire suppression system. I'll see you guys with that video.